going to be talking about playing chord progressions in a band setting. For many genres of music, you don't really need to know that much to get started as a bass player in a lot of types of bands. Many of them are not that demanding on the bass player for them to function as an active member of that band in playing songs with them and participating with them. So as a bass player, what typically goes on in those genres of music, I'm talking about maybe like folk music, country music, indie, rock and pop, classic rock and pop, alternative rock, a lot of these types of music. The bass plays some pretty simple parts and yet plays a very significant role in that band. However simple it may be, they must do their job correctly. So the key to playing in these bands is to be able to play along with what is called chord progressions. Now, what are chord progressions? Chord progressions are the chords that are played in the song. I refer you to this example. It's basically got the lyrics and the chords placed where they are supposed to be. And so there's another example that I will place in here called a lyric sheet, a lyric lead sheet. And that's actually got the words, the chords, and the lead melody of the song. And so you will be providing a bass accompaniment to those things. Another thing to keep in mind is the rhythm. So you would be playing bass notes with the correct rhythm for that. This is not meant to mislead you into thinking that all bass playing will be simple. It's simply meant to kind of counteract the idea that you have to be some kind of a musical virtuoso in order to play bass in a band. The other place that we get chord progressions is we hear them. We listen and we write down what we think the chords are. Use your ears. In other words, if I want to get familiar with what something looks like or with what someone looks like, I use my eyes, right? I go look at them and I see what they look like, right? If I want to hear what something sounds like, what do? I listen. You know, many people are depending heavily on like standard notation, you know, music notes to visually look at these notes, which then symbolize these sounds, which I then am supposed to be familiarizing myself on my instrument, and then I am able to translate through all of that process. Oh, I need to play this note. So that's actually involves your mind and your eyes in a process that perhaps not as much of your mind and just your ears can handle. And that especially comes true when you have songs in your mind that are trying to come out and you want to express them. You may be doing it all, as they say, by ear. And so sometimes that process can be much faster once you get used to listening to music and get used to playing music. And so you can bypass some of this visual stuff. And so, for example, regarding listening to a tune, maybe you hear a chord and you start playing notes through trial and error until you hit the one that sounds right, and maybe your bandmates say, yeah, that's the one, you know, and so you're playing the root note at that point. But, you know, once you know a few notes, just, you know, for the songs that you're learning, maybe you only are learning 3 songs right now. You can learn the notes for those songs, the chords. And so the most basic kind of bass playing is playing what's called the root note of each chord in a certain rhythm. For example, so that's going from C, a C chord is played there, and you're playing the root note, the C note. So you can maybe spiff it up by playing the first note and the fifth note each time you do it. For example. So you have to play along with the rhythm. Now, what is the rhythm? The rhythm can be derived, like if there's a drummer in the band, to kind of get an idea of what they're doing. A lot of people say it's really good to line up some of your notes with the bass drum of the drummer. And you may not have a drummer, and so you might be studying the guitar player to see what rhythm they're playing. If you're all collaborating together to create this thing, you can all suggest rhythms. You might be able to suggest a rhythm, and the guitar player will play along with that, and the drummer, if they are there, they may join in and kind of get a vibe from your rhythm that inspires them, and they go, well, how about this? And they will suggest an improvement to your rhythm. So let me give some examples of chord progressions. I also want to let you know that many people refer to chord progressions by number. And so instead of just saying C, G, F, C, they might say 1, 5, 4, 1. This is the 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, which is at the octave. So that's a 5. And then a 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So 1, 5, 4, 5, or 1, 5, 4, 1 progression. Okay, here's one used in classic rock a lot. This is what I'd call a 1, 7, 4, 1. 1, 7, 4, 1 in the key of D. So D, C, G, D. Like I say, you need to know your notes on the bass in order to play chord progressions, although you don't need to completely know all the notes on your bass to begin playing chord progressions. You just, this is D, this is C, this is G, this is D, so you know that right now, because I just showed you. So that's all you need to know, and then I'll show you how to play some chord progressions. A lot of times, you might not play at the very beginning, and then you'll do a basic thing and you build to it. that's a D, you get the picture, that's a D, C, G chord progression. Let's do another one here. Let's see what this is first. Okay, this is a 1-5-6-4. It's a very broadly played one. Here's an example. Here it is. So I was doing U2's With or Without You with my very iffy voice, but to give you an idea of a song in which this 1-6-4-5 is used. It's used all over the place, not just through entire songs, but as parts of the songs. But notice I never played, I don't think I was playing any runs, but what I will tell you is in that song, I listened to it recently, the bass, that's all it does through the whole song. So just so you know, I mean, I'll play it for a second. That's all it does through the whole song. Except for some places where it just stays on this name. You know, and it kind of just hangs out on there for a while. And then it comes in. You know, it does that. And that's an example of how basic bass can get. You're just playing the root note of each chord there. And so in that case, however that evolved within that band, but that was the way it ended up. Maybe in concerts it's done differently. Maybe he gets, you know, a little more imaginative. But on the record, he's doing that, and he's just getting maybe softer and louder or something like that. But that's all the bass player does. So no one's going to tell me that you need to be a bass whiz to do this part over and over for, you know, 6 minutes. And so that gives you an idea of how simple bass can be. The reason is I don't want all these dazzling bass players that you might see on YouTube that are what's called bass soloists. I don't want them to distract you from thinking that you can play bass in your band. They've got wonderful solos to offer, and you may go into solos, especially in live performances. But to do the basics of each song and to get started with your mates, especially if they're not that advanced either, you can get started. So anyway, and that's an example of a chord progression that's commonly used, and that's an example of how you could play bass to it. So what you're doing is you're playing the root note, and a lot of times in other progressions you might play a root and a fifth. A fifth, you know, is just simply going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 up a scale. That's your fifth. Your octave is 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And a lot of bass playing, to vary it, instead of just playing that root, you're playing according to the rhythm of the song, but you might be going. So that's how you can start in playing accompaniments to these chord progressions, and you can also play what's called a third. But then you have to know a little bit more about the chords. You can play a first, a third, and a fifth, but on the third you need to know if it's a major third, which means a regular do, re, mi, what you hear in do, re, mi, or it's called a flatted third, or it's the minor third. And so minor chord, typically when you see G minor, when you just see that, pretty much if you see chord name like G and M, that means you're playing the flatted third. And so you need to make sure that when you're playing bass accompaniments for a chord, that you don't clash with that. In other words, you don't contradict what is being played in that chord on the guitar. If they're playing this, you better not be playing this. And vice versa, if they're playing this, you better not be going. So you might call it happy and sad. A lot of people consider the major to be more happy and the minor to be more serious or sad. The bottom line, a memory device for this is don't be happy when the band is sad. Don't be sad when the band is happy. That is when they're playing a happy chord or a sad chord. So, la, 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 when they're doing that, la, 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 don't go, don't be happy when the sound is sad. So, in other words, translation, on minor chords, play a minor third if you're going to play a third. You don't have to play that third. You can play, as we said, well, there's a million things you can play, but getting started, you can play the fifth, you can play the octave. So that's just some beginning information on that. So I got another one for you here. This is just what we were talking about, actually. You don't always have to start with the root note. Sometimes you'll start with the third. It just depends on what you're doing, what situation it is. So hopefully that helps. I have one more, because those are all in what's called 4/4 time. Your rhythm must go along with the timing it's in. 4/4 time means you're counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. In other words, they call it 4 beats per measure. If standard notation, those bar lines that go down, that's a measure, and they have 4 beats per measure. The other one is called 3/4, or some call it 6/8, which is like 3 times 2, 6/8 or 3/4. Basically, it's 3 beats per measure. Waltzes are done that way. Certain kind of jazz, many kinds of music have 3/4 type music. And so let's try that same chord progression, only in 3/4. Let's listen. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, So hopefully that helps you get an idea of playing chord progressions in a band. And summing up by saying that bass accompaniment can be very easily done, but it must be done right, and care must be taken to do it right. And doing it right, what that means is making it fit with the band's rhythm for that song, and making it enhance that song and provide, you might say, the backbone of it. It's got the backbone of the melody and the backbone of the rhythm contained within it, and when it's played exactly on time, it has a very good effect on the song. The song gets delivered. So that concludes this. If you don't know notes, refer to Bass Basics Learning Notes video. So if you like this video, please say so. Also subscribe to this. Thank you. Bye.